Two trade deals, a new year, and a new look at the economy. Joining me now is Mervin Jebaraj. He's the economist and director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at the University of Arkansas Walton College of Business. Let's begin with the USMCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. It's the new NAFTA. How will we see aspects of this new trade deal play out in the U.S. and Arkansas economy, Mervin?
Well, you know, every time somebody says USMCA, it kind of makes me want to break out into YMCA here anytime. But what would we expect for the Arkansas economy and the U.S. economy? I think, you know, as much as some people would not like me to say that, I think that we're going to see more of the same than anything else. And I think what USMCA accomplished is provide some continuity from NAFTA. There was a time in 2018 when we were threatening to leave NAFTA behind, and all of our trade deals and all of our trade between Canada, Mexico, and the United States behind, and there was a lot of uncertainty for businesses because, you know, all of our supply chains are very much global. Here in Arkansas, Canada and Mexico are our top exporters, you know, with them being part of NAFTA. All of that had a huge question mark behind it while NAFTA was being negotiated, renegotiated, and all of these things. So having USMCA pass in the United States and be signed, it still hasn't passed in Canada, but likely will, is very important in providing certainty more than anything else to Arkansan businesses that have exports going to Canada, going to Mexico, also businesses in Arkansas that use Canadian and Mexican inputs as intermediate products to make other goods and services. So all of that, you know, mostly what the deal provides to Arkansas, I think, is certainty. Within the trade agreement, there are some clauses to increase more manufacturing in the United States, but I think what is likely to happen is that manufacturers will probably pay the penalty than move manufacturing to the United States. So I don't expect to see a whole lot more movement in jobs. I don't expect to see a whole lot more increased exports or increased imports as a result of the trade deal, but just more certainty for you know, suppliers and manufacturers that were relying on the provisions that were in NAFTA going forward over the next 16 years.
Phase one of a trade deal with China has been announced. We do know some of the details, and some we don't. It includes some possible good news for Arkansas's agricultural community. What are your expectations for how this plays out?
So like you mentioned, we don't have a whole lot of details yet, but one of the tidbits about the Phase 1 trade deal that we do have is that China is committing to purchasing soybeans again from the United States. If you'll remember, back in 2018 when we imposed tariffs on them, they cut their soybean imports from the United States down to zero. Arkansas produces, you know, a lot of soybeans that does go to China, and that pretty much tanked that particular market, you know, along with the weather problems that soybean producers have had in Arkansas. They've had a really rough year of it. So the fact that this trade deal has been agreed this early, well before planting season, means that soybean producers have some level of certainty that they will get those Chinese markets for soybean back this year. There is some possibility that soybean imports from China will increase over time. Of course, that depends on domestic Chinese pork consumption and how much more soy meal they need, how other global producers of soybeans will fare given their weather situation in Brazil and Argentina. So all of those, you know, will determine whether or not Arkansas will get more soybeans exported to China than they used to have in 2018. We'll have to wait and see. But on the other hand, what Phase 1 does not do is get rid of any of the tariffs that we imposed on intermediate inputs that our manufacturers are using. So throughout 2018 and 2019, you know, we've had a lot of announcements from manufacturers in Arkansas that were either not going to open new plants because of the higher price of intermediate inputs that were being imported from China as a result of the tariffs. And some companies that do produce goods here eventually cut back on how much they produce, and some of them closed as a result of the tariffs. So that's not, you know, none of those jobs are going to come back. None of those expansion plans are going to come back because those tariffs still remain. And I think that is a big concern. Manufacturing has been hit hard by the tariffs imposed on China, and so that does not change because all those tariffs are still in place. So, the other thing in Arkansas, I guess, that was on hold indefinitely while the tariff war was constantly escalating was all the Chinese investments in manufacturing facilities in Arkansas, especially in southern Arkansas and eastern Arkansas, where they really could have used those jobs. I haven't heard any progress on those, but let's hope that the lull in hostilities means that some of those projects are put back online and we get those jobs in southern and eastern Arkansas.
You mentioned manufacturing tariffs. Do we have any idea what phase 2 might include? Could they be part of the equation?
Well, I think, it entirely depends on the outcome of the election. I think if phase 2 would mean removing the tariffs that we imposed in 2018, which would be a huge climb down for this administration, given that they've already backed off the tariffs that we imposed from earlier this year. So I think phase 2 is anyone's guess. I think everybody's just going to wait till the election, and probably the Chinese are hoping for a change in administration more than anything else.
Finally, you held your big annual economic conference in Northwest Arkansas this week. What was your biggest takeaway of what to expect in the new year, the new decade?
So Arkansas had, overall a pretty good year. If you're looking at the statewide picture in terms of employment and unemployment rate in Arkansas remained at record lows. In 2019, the average unemployment rate was about 3.5%, just the lowest it's been in a very long time. And as much as a lot of employers do complain about how hard it is to find employees and how much employment costs have gone up, what is incredibly good news and is worth celebrating is that wages are finally beginning to rise as a result of the really low unemployment rates. On a nominal basis, unadjusted for inflation, wages in Arkansas last year went up about 5%. So if you adjust for inflation, that's just north of 3% increase in wages for Arkansans, and that's really good news. That's the overall picture when we're looking at the state as a whole. But again, if you dive into the data a little more, you look at how many jobs the state added, a little over 14,000 to 15,000 jobs last year. Close to half of those jobs really came from Northwest Arkansas. So, big part of that net job increase in the state is coming from just one region in the state. Central Arkansas accounted for most of the rest of the net job increase in Jonesboro for a little bit more. So, really, you're not seeing even growth across the entire state. Most of the growth is concentrated here in Northwest Arkansas, in Central Arkansas, and in Northeast Arkansas. So, looking forward into 2020, I think what you're going to see is something similar type of job growth in the state, assuming that the trade wars remain where they are and don't escalate. I think what is important for the state to do is try to figure out how to kind of spread the economic growth and so that it's not just concentrated in Northwest Arkansas, Central Arkansas, and Jonesboro, and that other metro areas and non-metro areas in the state continue to see job growth as well.
He's Mervin Jebaraj with the Walton College of Business. As always, thanks.
Thank you.